Hello and welcome to IBTimes UK. I'm joined by Natalie Bennett, the leader of the Green Party of England and Wales. Hello Natalie, thank you for joining us.
Great to be here.
Moving into the general election next year, despite the surge in the polls for the Greens, you face a fight to hold onto your seat in Brighton Pavilion. What is your realistic ambitions for the 2015 election?
Well, as you rightly identify, keeping Brighton Pavilion, Caroline Lucas has been such a brilliant MP, obviously is our priority number one. I think we've seen the Labour Party throw a great deal of money and resources at that, but I think, in the end, my experience, I was actually in Brighton this week, and a lot of people on the doorstep say, yeah, Caroline's great. And that's a nice thing to find when you're canvassing. But more broadly around the country, we've identified 11 other target seats. And among those, I particularly mentioned Bristol West and Norwich South. But that actually sort of implies that politics stays much the same as it is now. And I think there really is a big chance that we might see next year something entirely different. And the model for this, I think, is the Scottish Referendum, where we saw 97% of eligible people enrolling to vote and 85% of people voting. And I was up there about 10 days or so before, and it was true that so un-Britishly, strangers at bus stops were talking about politics. People were just engaged, enthused, really felt like this was a chance to make a difference democratically. And it's just possible to imagine that we might see a growing lie to the frustration and the fed-upness that so many people feel about politics, a determination to change. And if that happened, next May, and we saw an 85% turnout in a general election, we usually get 60 or 65%. We saw young people, the under 25s, voting at the same kind of levels as the over 60s do now. Then you can actually really break British politics wide open. And who knows how many seats we could win at that point. I'm declining to put a prediction on it, but it could be a very interesting time.
But in a worst case scenario, and you did lose that seat in Brighton Pavilion, and you gained no others, how much of a step back would that be for your party?
That would obviously be a huge blow for us, but what I'm confident at the moment, we're polling 8% or 7-8%. We would be. I think we will collect a lot of votes in next year's election, and I think however many seats we get, it's going to be very clear that the first past the post electoral system is utterly past its sell-by date. We're the only country in Europe that's left with that kind of system. If you look at Wales has got PR, Scotland's got PR. We have a system that's not working. And one of the things I think might happen in this election is we might well see quite a lot of MPs elected with not much more than 25% of the vote. We're going to see the vote splitting in all directions. And if that happens, I don't think first past the post will survive, and I think we'll see massive constitutional change in the next few years in Britain, which is long overdue given the fact that if you look at Westminster, we haven't had a significant change in Westminster since women got the vote. That was 1918. I think we really don't want to get to a century later without further reforms in Westminster.
If it does come then that there's a huge split in the vote and no party manages to get an overall majority, a coalition would most likely be formed. But you've already said that you wouldn't enter a coalition, it'd be a confidence and supply agreement. What exactly is that? Okay.
A confidence and supply agreement is basically a deal to maintain stable government, maintain a minority government in office. The confidence refers to a no confidence motion. So that would make a government fall if it passes. So except under really extreme circumstances, you wouldn't make the government fall through that sort of motion. And also the supply refers to getting a budget through. A government can't govern without a budget. So after negotiation, you would agree to let a budget through. So those two things, you would determine how you vote beforehand. But what it does is, rather than a coalition, is because you're not part of the ministerial team, you're not part of the government, everything else you can vote according to your principles, your manifesto, what you've promised people. And that means to pick an example at random, tuition fees, for example, university tuition fees. We believe in very, very strongly, have always believed in zero tuition fees. We think education is a public good that should be paid for from general taxation. And so in that case, there's a vote comes up, we can vote for that. So you keep your principles, but you don't get the ministerial cars.
Isn't there a danger that the party would lack influence? It's already been said by Conservatives, if you vote UKIP, you get Labour. Isn't there a danger it'll become vote Green and you could end up getting the Conservatives?
Well, I think we've got a situation in Britain where first past the post has trained people for generations, really, to vote for the personal party they dislike the second most, to stop the people they really hate getting elected. And that has given us the kind of politics we have now. That's given us a situation where you have a Labour Party and a Tory party who might sound a little bit different, but when you actually look at their policies, you can barely get a cigarette paper between them. And so if we keep doing the same thing, if voters keep doing the same thing, we'll get the same kind of result, a clearly failed political system. My suggestion for a peaceful political revolution next year is everyone vote, start off with, and everyone vote for the party, policies or people they most believe in. And I think the way in which that could deliver that peaceful revolution is really now quite clear.